everything that I like about music, about jazz, is Monk. 3 days of Monk, it was just like, there's no way I can turn that down.
The genius is how convicted he is in his vision. It's unrelenting.
There was no compromise, no matter what. And for me, early on, that was so powerful. I wanted to be part of that.
I have spent almost 50 years trying to figure out what he's doing. I'll never get to the end of what there is to learn in his music.
Thelonious Monk has been a very important influence in every generation.
His music still sounds fresh. His music is timeless.
He didn't sound like anybody else. To me, his music is standard.
When I first arrived at Duke Performances a decade ago, we had made a festival called Following Monk that tried to take Monk as the starting point and imagine the myriad ways that he impacted culture. When we did engage with Thelonious Monk's music, when we did get to hear the compositions themselves, I realized that the stuff just had an enduring quality. I knew we were approaching in 2017 his 100th birthday, and I thought it would be interesting to do a 10-day festival with about 25 events that ran contiguously in a single custom outfitted space. So the tunes were really bumping into one another. I wanted to get attention of jazz fans, not just here in Durham or in North Carolina, but across the country. And I felt like we had to make a bold play in order to do that.
Ladies and gentlemen, the J.D. Allen Trio, J.D. Allen, Rudy Royston, Gregg August, with Frisell.
Mr. Dave Douglas, Kris Davis. Mr. Jason Moran, Tyshawn Sorey, Ben Wendel, Gerald Clayton, the Como Mamas, Orrin Evans, Chris Pattishall, Jeb Patton, Ernest Turner, David Williams, Victor Lewis, Ethan Iverson, Melissa Aldana, Chris Potter, Houston Person, Joshua Redman, and tonight Ravi Coltrane. We're pretty happy with that lineup.
I kept waiting to see the big Thelonious Monk celebration in New York or in San Francisco or in Paris or whatever, and it just never materialized. So why did we take on this experiment? He felt like one of a handful of artists that was worth spending this much time with. He's born here in North Carolina. There's the iconic visuals, the unmistakable style of play, the 60 unimpeachable compositions. There's the rootedness to gospel and stride piano, as well as to an experimental music and the avant-garde. It just seems like so much converges in him. He's the intersection for so many important things in our musical lives.
A lot of people saw Monk only as a gateway to the avant-garde, or to being crazy, to wearing a funny hat. And Aaron and I think have been on the same page, like, well, we're here in North Carolina. We have a chance to actually present something really grounded.
There's a real warmth, you know, it's so clearly connected to the South and the blues.
Underneath all that was that feeling, and that feeling of dance.
I hear the gospel, I hear the spirituals, I hear the trains, I hear the family, I hear all that stuff.
I lack the musical vocabulary to describe what's happening inside the music, but I hear those notes and that jagged rhythm, that ugly beauty, and for me it has a kind of emotional tug to it that's unusual, you know? It feels very American to me. It feels like my experience of American music.
I heard about him being from Rocky Mount, and since he was from North Carolina, I wanted to do a tribute to him, you know. He was known as the high priest of bebop, that's what some people called him, so I was kind of doing like an altar, like a tribute to him in that regard. I was really listening to a lot of jazz. Monk, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, you know. I was playing a lot of that in the background while I work as well. Sometimes I work in an improvised style. Just like jazz can be improvised, and I might have an object or two. I was like, I might be able to use it in some form or fashion, just like the keyboard here. I might not have an idea right then, but I know at some point I'll come up with something. He actually said, as a quote, he said, silence is the loudest noise in the world. I was thinking about using that quote in that silhouette. Either that or always know was something else he said, always know. The word know, if you inverted the W, is like his name backwards. No in Monk.
Collaboration is incredibly hard. If you find a great collaborator, especially around a project as complex as this, with as much context as this, then it makes the thing go. I reached out to Ethan Iverson when I realized, like, oh, this is going to be a lot of jazz musicians working on a lot of different material, and I need someone who's an expert on this music.
When I was still in high school, I learned all of Monk's compositions. For me, he was really the base of what I know about this music. Monk was always in the center of the mosaic. So curating this festival, it's just sort of a miracle that I get to do it, you know, as far as my own personal story goes.
What I needed was someone who had a kind of spirit of generosity to take the time to go back and forth about what we were making, which guests we were inviting, to actually co-curate something.
I do think tributes are difficult. Trying to reinvent the past is hard. A lot of musicians don't want to do it. But Monk's music is very rich and it's very difficult, and it's in the repertoire. So what I felt from all the musicians is they were happy to take a moment to study some Monk.
I was pleased that the idea of a central location resonated with people, and that central location sounded good and felt good, and that the work we commissioned from André deepened people's experience. But the thing I think I was most surprised by was that there was a community of people, thousands really, who came together at a warehouse in downtown Durham over 10 days to listen to Thelonious Monk's music and to be together. And the experience of that was actually so profound, that sense of community, that sense of careful listening, of kinship, of care for the music, that it's actually turned my thinking about my work really on its head. And I don't know where that leads as a presenter, right? But I've not really ever had an experience like that around performing arts.
His life is a lesson in commitment. He never complained, he never talked about conditions. He just continued to create music, as all great artists do.
This is his 100th birthday. We're celebrating his life. That's the goal, man. He kind of wrote out a recipe for that.
Your spirit live on. Your works live on after you die. And I think it's the same thing with him. You know, people realize what he was doing.
When you talk about Bach or Beethoven, I mean, for me, he's on that level. Like, it's not going backwards to look at what those guys are doing. It's like they did this work and they gave us a lot of clues as to what could be possible. And then it's our job, I guess, to try to search around for them and then keep going somehow.
I mean, I don't think he changed the direction of jazz, but I think he made it possible for whatever direction jazz went in, he expanded it. Wherever jazz goes, it's wider because of Monk.
I see part of my role as a writer and curator is to just sort of keep the needle moving in the right direction, that we see Monk and the other greats as this real inspiration to do better in the future with our music.
I'm incredibly proud of what we accomplished. I think we made something that is, you know, not only was unique in the country for its celebration of Monk, but was an unusual and wonderful and crazy kind of festival. And I think those are the kinds of events that people want to go to at this point.
playing the music of Thelonious Monk in his home state means a lot for a lot of reasons, and it means a lot for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. But this was our way of showing genuine appreciation for a person who changed the direction of history simply by being able to play the piano. And all the people who took care of him throughout his life, his wife, his parents, his grandparents. I think of all these people as part of this story that we kind of so frequently share so easily. But that line, that legacy that Thelonious Monk leaves for us to understand about what the possibility of music, let alone what America can be, we tried to be an example of tonight. So thank you all for being here. Thank you.